went down to a youth conference, and the theme was generosity. And it was interesting because I going into it, my buddy Max, one of my best friends, he called me and said, "Hey, will you teach at the youth conference?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I would love to help out in any way I can." And so he's like, "The theme's going to be generosity." I'm like, "Oh, that's sick." And so he's like, "Yeah, I'll text you the different verses that you guys are going to be doing or whatever," right? And so he texts me, and I'm thinking it's going to be like, how to be generous to other people and so money and giving and all these things. And I go down and I find mine, and he's like, "Yeah, your topic's going to be giving generously to God." And I was like, "What? What does that even mean? What do you mean by that?" And I was like, "Well, this just got difficult." But it ended up being a great conference, and Max, he kind of kicked it off, and he talked about how obviously Jesus is the most generous person ever, and he started with that and spoke about how Jesus, set the bar and set the example for generosity through giving his life, and how it was just God really displaying generosity on the cross to us. And then my buddy Reeve went up after him, and he talked about gifts of generosity that God has given us through the Spirit, and how we can give generously to other people with our service, with giving of our time, talents, treasure. And I really liked it too, but he talked about how we can generously encourage other people, right? And so he gave those three really practical things. And then I finished with showing generosity towards God. And it was interesting because as I studied for it, I looked up the definition of generosity, and it's interesting because it means giving liberally or open-handed, and also another thing to be marked by abundance. And I think that's pretty interesting, especially when you look at the first time it's mentioned in the Bible. And it's mentioned in Deuteronomy when God commands Moses to give this law to the Israelites that they are to generously give to the poor in their group. To the people who are needy, God calls them to generously give. But God uses a specific word. He says, "Give to them wholeheartedly, withholding nothing." So when I think about generosity, and how we can return the favor to God, how can we be generous to God? And it's kind of like the question was, I saw myself thinking is, what could he possibly need from me? Like, how can I give? And I'm thinking, obviously, like in material ways, because when I think about giving, I think we all, in generosity, I think we all kind of tend to lean that way and think that. But I started to ask myself, well, what does he need from me? I'm just a guy. Like, he doesn't need me. He doesn't need anything from me. And I think as I pondered this and prepared for it, it took a while, but eventually I realized it's not about God needing anything from us. It's about God wanting all of us. God wanting us to devote ourselves to Him wholeheartedly. And so there was 3 areas that I spoke on, and the first was giving God our mind. Now, when we think mind, I'm not talking about our brains and our being smart, but I'm talking about our will, right? Some of us are very strong-willed. Have you met Gideon before? That boy is very strong-willed. It's a battle. It's a battle. The other day, he wanted these special cereal, but he had them before, and he didn't eat them. And I knew that he was not going to like them because he did not like them before. And he said, "I want that cereal." And I'm like, "No, you're not going to have the cereal." So then he said, "Yes." I said, "No, you're not going to have the cereal." And Gideon just gets this way. I don't know where he gets it from. It's not. But you can just see him like, he's sitting there and you can just see him like mentally digging his heels in. And he's like, "I'm not going to budge. This is what I'm going to do." And he is very strong-willed. He does not want to give up. And I think sometimes we are also like this, right? We are very strong-willed. But there's a good example of somebody who isn't and who wasn't, but it's Jesus. Right? Jesus is very open. He came here with a purpose. In Luke, there's a story of Mary and Joseph. Jesus is about 12 years old at this point, and they go to Jerusalem. They're going to celebrate the Passover, so it's like a 3-day thing. It's a whole thing. Everybody did it. They're all there celebrating the Passover. Well, they're on their way home. Mary and Joseph are, and they realize that Jesus is not with them. And they're like, where the heck is Jesus? Where is he? Realize he's not there. It's like, well, we got to go back and get him because we left him in Jerusalem apparently. Like, how do you leave Jesus somewhere? But they did, and you can read this story verbatim in Luke chapter 2, verses 41 is where it starts. But they finally show up. They finally find Jesus. And his mom's like freaking out, as you could imagine. Like, where are you? Where have you been? Why? Like, she literally says, why did you stress me out? Why? And his response is great. In Luke 2, verse 49, it says, why did you seek me? And this is Jesus speaking to her. Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business? Something about Jesus is interesting I learned when studying for this is he quite frequently uses that phrase, I must. Jesus was led. He had a sense of purpose. He knew that his mission was to be about his Father's business. He was a man on mission. And I think for us, the question that I propose to the students, and I think it also to us fits, is how much better would your life be if you were simply about your Father's business? Think about all the things that stress you out, that cause you anxiety, that make your life not fun. How much better would it be if you were about your Father's business, if you weren't focused on those things, if you didn't dwell on those things? Probably a lot better. Probably a lot better. Something we're going to examine throughout these 3 things is that Jesus always offers a better way. Jesus always offers a better solution. And again we see in John 6, verse 38, for I came down from heaven not to do mine own will, but the will of him that sent me. Jesus wasn't here to do the things that Jesus wanted to do. He was here to do the things that God wanted him to do. You see, I think oftentimes when life gets a little hard, because Jesus had to do some hard things. He had to suffer some very difficult things that he didn't want to do. He literally prays in Luke 22:42, Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours. In the garden, facing what he knows to be going to be the worst moment of his life, he prays that God would deliver him from this. Oftentimes when life gets hard, I think sometimes we're very quick to blame the devil, right? We're very quick to be like, oh, the devil's just after me. When in reality, God just is trying to align your will with his. And we blame the devil for something that God is allowing to happen, and maybe he is using the devil. But also sometimes I think it's people are just bad drivers, right? Like, I don't think it's the devil. I think they're just bad drivers. Like, I think people are just rude sometimes, and they cut you off, or they don't look at you, or don't acknowledge you, or they say something mean to you without really intending to. It just happens. And I think about Jonah's life, right? Jonah, he had bad things happening to him. Things that were like, could have easily been, but it was God. It was God simply trying to get Jonah to realize that, hey, my way is better. Follow me. Do what I am asking you to do. It's okay for us to desire certain outcomes. Jesus desired not to have to drink of the cup of wrath that he was about to have to drink of. That's what he prayed. If it is your will, take it away from me. Jesus wanted a certain thing, and that's okay. It's even good. We should want good things, right? We should want good things to happen, right? I really wanted Iago not to lose part of his leg, but that is not part of what God wanted. And it's really hard for us to do this. It's really hard for us to be okay with that. But seeing Iago be so grateful, and he said to me, I said, how are you doing with this, like that you're going to lose part of your leg? And because, again, he loves like running, jump, like he's not meant to be inside. Like he does. I think the worst part about him being in the hospital is that he sits in a bed all day. Not that he's getting chemotherapy. It's that he's like, I need to be doing something, but I can't move. I can't run. I can't play bat. I can't do any of these things. My doctor won't let me. I'm like, yeah, because you're not doing well physically, Iago. You can't do things. But he said to me, I'm just really glad that like it's going to be over. I'm just really happy that it's going to be over. I'm really happy that I was able to like encourage people. And so Iago saw this, and he was just such an example of this. It's not okay for us to assume that just because we want it, that it's good, and or just because we want it and it's good, that it's what God wants us to have. When we pray for things like Jesus, we need to pray for God's will above the things that we want. It's okay for us to have wants and desires, but we need to pray that God's will would ultimately be the desire of our heart. When we read the Psalms, like we've been doing, we see that, that's really what David struggles with in lots of the Psalms that he writes. He's praying from places of torment, and I was joking about 38. It's actually a really, really cool psalm. I won't spoil it, because he's really excited to teach it next week. So everyone, you better be nice next week, because just know he's really excited. But this is just getting you back for all the times you make fun of us as kids up here. I told Lexi I would do it. And I got another one up my sleeve, don't worry. It's coming later. But David, he really had to struggle through things. He had to work through things. He had to pray, and he had to go through these different things just to bring his will. And you can read it in the Psalms sometimes as it finally just comes to a head, and he realizes, okay, Lord, not your will, but mine. And I love... no, I got that backwards. Not my will, but yours. That's what I get for making fun of people. I love what 1 John 5, verse 14 and 15 says. It says, now this is the confidence that we have in him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have the petition that we have asked of him. As I said before, Jesus presents us a better way of doing things. We sometimes are so focused on what we want and what we think is good for our life, and we're stressing ourselves out, and we're focusing on the wrong things. But what we have in Jesus is this confidence. Now, this is the confidence we have in him, being Jesus, that we can ask him anything. There's nothing off limits for us to ask Jesus. But he says that if we ask it according to his will, then he hears us. So we have a guarantee. We have a blessing. And the guarantee is this. If we ask things, if our will is aligned with God's will, and we ask in that realm, then we know for certain that Jesus hears us. We know that he hears us. And not only do we know that he hears us, but we know that he is going to go petition for us to God. So this is the better way that Jesus provides. We don't just have to be blind obedience, but there's blessing in our obedience. When our will aligns with God's will, good things happen. Good things happen. We need to be more open-handed with what we want, right? Like Gideon, we need to be more open-handed with that, with our will. Because the flip side of that is, look at what happened to Pharaoh. He was so stubborn in his ways, and finally God just said, fine, have what you want. Have what you want. I don't do that with Gideon, but because he doesn't know that I'm more stubborn than him. It's a battle at that point. But we have confidence that Jesus hears us. We have confidence that he's going to be interceding for us to God the Father. That is a blessing. The next thing we looked at was how we can give open-handed. We talked about our mind, but now with our heart. With our heart. Through devotion. Being devoted to God. What do we know about Jesus' devotional life, if you will? Well, we know from Luke 5, verse 16, it says, "So he himself often withdrew into the wilderness and prayed." Jesus' life was, or Jesus' devotion was often, right? It wasn't a one-off thing. He didn't wait. How many of you wait till you need something to pray? He didn't wait. He just did it. It was a normal part of his routine. So think about it this way. If your life was set up to where you always had a time where you knew you would be praying, or you knew you would be reading the word, or you knew you would be doing whatever, then when something bad comes out, your mindset's a little different. Well, I have devotional time in a few minutes. I have my devotional time now. I'm going to bring that to the Lord. It's much easier to pray when you already have a prayer life. It's much easier to be devoted to God when you already have a devotional life. It's so much easier if you already have these things set up. It's like and mostly this is for the ladies, right? But you guys, when you get ready, let's be honest. You take time in front of the mirror. You take time, and there's nothing wrong with that. I got no hate. You do. And even us guys, right? I imagine Matthias. Oh, I imagine that boy in the mirror a long time. Yeah, Matthias like, yes, he is. He was telling me about how he can't put conditioner in his hair because it won't be as... I was like, dude, be quiet. Stop. You need heavier weight on that squat rack. It's not hurting enough. But take a lot of time in front of the mirror getting ready. Why? Because you want to present your best self to people. You want to put your best foot forward. Or you, if you're working, you want to look professional. All those very good things. Nothing wrong with that. Right? They're very good things. But we spend all this time getting ready, looking in the mirror physically, and then spiritually, it's just like a quick glance. Right? We walk by, we're like, oh, I'm good. I read the verse of the day. I'm good. Right? It's a quick glance. You walk by and you spend 30 seconds. You're like, okay, I look good. Boom, go. How many times, if you were to do that, you'd miss something? If you were getting ready physically for work, right, and you just did a quick glance, you wouldn't look your best. You would miss things. You wouldn't see certain things. We need to spend time looking at ourselves spiritually in the mirror. We need to spend time getting ready spiritually. Just like physically you want to be your best, you want to be your best spiritually. Because life is hard. Because people cut you off. Because things happen. And when you are spiritually ready, then it is so much easier to handle those things with grace. It is so much easier to handle those things with just patience. It's easier to be a parent. It's easier to be a good coworker. It's easier to be a good coach, a good student, whatever it is. We also know from Matthew 14:23, it says, and when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Jesus often spent his devotional times in private, in quiet. Our devotional time should be a private thing. Right? It's not like, oh, my devotional time is too tied to my friends and we do our devotional time together. That's great, but it's a private thing. It's between God and I. And it's a time for us to be intimate with God. To share with him what we're struggling with, what we're dealing with, how we're feeling. You can't do that if your devotional time is not private. If it's between you and other people. I think that a story I just can't help but share with this is Rachel's very particular about this, in a good way. Okay? This is a compliment, I promise. Her devotional time is sacred. I'm pretty much not allowed out there when she is doing it because I'll start talking and then it's not quiet. So I have to stay in my room. And it was so cute the other day. Gideon woke up early and Gideon was like, just are the same, right? I love Gideon. He's just yapping. He's just talking and talking and talking, talking. And she's like, Gideon, you need to go in the room with Daddy or go in your bed. And so he comes in there to me, and apparently it was too dark in my room. So he leaves. I hear him out there again. And Rachel says to him, Gideon, do you want me to be a good mother today? And he's like, yeah. She's like, go to your room. And she said it in her mom voice. Gideon, he's not stubborn then, of course. Gideon gets up and goes off to his room, fell back asleep. Because, we're talking, it's like 5:30 in the morning at this point. But to me, it was just so funny. But it's important. Because she knew that if she doesn't get this time, I have to protect this time. Because if I don't get this time, I'm not going to be able to be who God has called me to be. I'm not going to be able to be the best version of who God has called me to be. I really think when our devotional lives are doing well, when our devotional lives are going well, things around us are easier. Things around us are simple. You don't get as bugged as easily. The last part I want to point out is Mark 1:35. It says, now in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight, he went out and departed to a solitary place, and there he prayed. Most people dwell on the fact that this was done in the morning, and they're like, well, that's what it is. It has to be in the morning. I had a teacher in Bible college who he said, and a guy I really respect, and he was like, one time in his life, he's like, I prefer it in the morning because it gets me ready for the day. He said, but right now with a new baby, the mornings are not quiet. I can't actually prepare myself for the day. When this was spoken about Jesus, it was done in preparation for his ministry. It was done before the ministry that Jesus was getting ready to go out and do. Right? Jesus' devotional life was done before the ministry. Think about how much ministry takes place in our lives on a day-to-day basis. You don't have to work at a church to do ministry day to day. There are people out there that have problems, that have issues, that need love, that need encouragement, that need to know it's okay. And if you're not prepared to do that, then God's going to find somebody else. Which means that we lose out on blessings. Jesus not only had a prayer life, but we know that he read the Old Testament. Multiple times in the gospel accounts speak of him schooling religious leaders, having a knowledge about it. And even that session when he was 2 years old, or 12 years old, they find him there teaching to the priests the Old Testament. And they're like dumbfounded with how wise this man is. And what about worship? Jesus' life was a picture of worship. Everything that Jesus did was worship. Because none of it was about him. All of it was about giving glory to God. That's why I love what our mission statement is, making Jesus famous. It's not about us. And it's hard. I'll tell you, it's hard to actually do that. It's easy to be like, yeah, we make Jesus famous. It's hard when you're making Jesus famous to actually sit there and be like, all right, now it's not about you, Isaac. It's not about you. Let go. Let go of control. Are you going to take that compliment or are you going to give it back to me? It's hard to do that. And not only, as I mentioned in the first section, when we live a life that is devoted to God, we have access to him as our intercessor, meaning he's going to pray on our behalf. But we also have blessings through him. here. Philippians 4, verses 6 and 7 says, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and minds through Christ Jesus." When our will is aligned with God, we have access to Him as an intercessor. But when our heart is aligned with God, when our heart is devoted to God and we're having devotional time, we are now no longer bound by anxiety. We're no longer bound by fear and worry. We no longer have to live in a state of anxiousness and a state of depression. Like, that's no longer our cup. That's no longer what we have to deal with. We have access to be able to walk in complete freedom when our lives are devoted to God fully. When we're having a relationship with Him and we're devoted, we're praying to Him and we're reading, what's going to happen is that you're going to feel better. You're going to start realizing that, oh man, my anxiety is getting a little better. My depression is getting a little easier to manage. I have a friend in Jesus whom I can talk to, whom I can have time with. And so the last thing we see is that we need to give God our body. So we give Him our mind, we give Him our heart, and we give Him our body. And when I speak of body, I mean actions. And there's ways you can look at actions. The first is how we carry ourselves daily, right? Like when people look at you, what do they see? When people look at you, do they say, man, his actions are really glorifying God? The things he does really glorify God. The second in our actions are the things that we do for people. Right? Jesus warns us about misrepresenting Him with our actions. In Matthew 23, verse 27 and 28, it says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautifully outward, but inside are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Even so, you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness." Jesus is warning to us is that our actions should be an outpouring of us inside. Right? Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. When the inside is good, when the inside is devoted to God, when our mind is right, when our heart is right, our actions should and will follow. You see, these religious leaders, they didn't care about what God thought. They only cared about what men thought of them. They didn't care that what God thought of them. They wanted men to see them and be like, oh, he's so cool. That guy's so cool. They would literally stand on the busiest streets in all of the town and pray and give to people. Like they would walk past, imagine they would walk past into the town, and they would walk past all these people with leprosy and all these blind people and all these sick people. They would walk past those people, and they would save their money. They would save the things they had to give till they got to a place where people could see them. That is hypocrisy. And if we're not careful, the mistake we can make is not caring how our actions affect people's understanding of Christ. We need to make sure that we don't have that mindset of, well, they know I'm a Christian. Well, they know it. We should act like it. And like the other two things, Jesus here offers us a better way. He tells us that we can be salt and light. And we can let our light shine so that people see our good works. That's true. They should see our good works. Some of them. Some need to be done in secret. But they can see our good works and do what? And glorify our Father in heaven. That must be our motivation. Our actions must be another form of worship. And so to be honest, if you want to give to FCA to look cool, don't. Like, I don't. There are plenty of people being called to by God that are going to do it in a way that glorifies him. But if you're like, oh, I want to be seen by God, I can do it, don't. Because Jesus tells these Pharisees, like, they have their reward. That's the reward. They don't get the reward in heaven. That's what I love about when they come and share at all these churches is what they're doing is they're being salt and light. They're allowing other people to see the good deeds that these kids are doing. And I hope that you watch that and man, God is good. Right? I hope you watch that video and go, God is like that. And to be honest, that video doesn't even do it justice of how awesome FCA is. How awesome Fields of Faith has been. And the amount of good that these students have been able to do on their campus in 4 short years, take a club of 5 to 10 people and turn it to 120 that has like a full-time leadership team basically, and they're all working hard to do different things and make the team function. And like, I'm blessed because I get to see that. And so our actions need to become a way that we glorify God, that we worship God through our actions. Our motivation for the things we do must be because, man, my will is aligned with God. I've devoted my heart into him fully. And now I give him my actions. I give him my deeds. That also might mean giving away something that's not godly, right? That doesn't just mean like, oh, okay, well, I can keep doing this thing if I just do these good things over here. No, if there's something you're being convicted of, like, that's ungodly and I shouldn't be doing that, then stop. Like, but I can't, so reach out to somebody. Fellowship. Read your Bible, pray. Again, these things kind of trickle down. If you're struggling to get rid of something, then take a step back. Okay, is my will fully given to God? Have I fully devoted my mind to him? Yes. Okay, good. What about my heart? How's my devotional life? Am I praying daily? Am I reading my Bible daily? And start to check things off the list. And if you're still struggling, then all you do is you go reach out to somebody. You go reach out to somebody, hey man, I'm really struggling with whatever the thing you're dealing with is. And watch how God works. So I told you I have one more story. I didn't forget, don't worry. So when I was a kid, when I was about 12, we just moved here from Somerville, and I started playing basketball, so it's like 6th grade. And I remember my dad told me, he said, I'm getting you a pair of basketball shoes for practice. I was so excited. I got home, and I promised, again, I feel like I promised, this is a conflict, just trust me. But he got me these, he got me these and one shoes from Ross. And I was like, what are those? Like, what? Those bricks. Like, those are and I was like, like, my face, I tried, but I maybe I didn't try, I don't know. But he knew that I didn't like them. He knew. And just silly kid and being embarrassed about silly stuff and not having name, like whatever, right? But in that moment, I was so like distraught and a mess and angry and frustrated and like, I don't know, all the other emotions of a sixth grader. And then I remember like, I wore them in practice, and no, let me tell you, they were bad. They were very bad. They were heavy. They hurt my feet. And I just remember, like, 2 days later or whatever, I get home, and there's a box. And in that box was, like, a brand new pair of I think they were like Adidas. They were like Derrick Rose's signature shoe, which he was like pre-torn ACL Derrick Rose, so he was like really, really good and MVP, and everyone loved him. There for me, and I was so excited. I was like over the moon, joyful, and whatever, right? And in that moment, it was, and looking, it's more like you look back at times in your life, but for whatever reason, like this is this is why, like, this is the reason why I buy my kids, like, I told Rachel, we cannot buy them Walmart shoes. We have to get them good. It's like trauma in my head. I don't know why. It's okay. It's not that big of a deal. But now looking back on it, and my friend Max, when he opened it up, the conference, he told a story, and he told a story about the most generous person he knew, which turned out to be his father, who had recently passed away. And it got me thinking, and Max made a comment where he said, aren't like the most generous people around you usually like some of like the best people around you, and the nicest, and level-headed, and godly? And when I really started to think about it, I was like, oh, yeah. And so looking back on this moment, I had like this realization that like the church was being planted here in Angels Camp. He wasn't working at Calvary Sonora, which means we didn't have very much money, if any at all. And I started having this realization of like, man, what did he sacrifice to like get me these shoes? And then I had a even deeper realization is like, man, the first pair of shoes was a sacrifice alone. And those were from Ross, meaning they're like cheap. They're like 40, 20, well, back then like $20. Now it'd be like $80 at Ross, but still, inflation, it's the same, right? But then I had a realization that on top of those, he also got me the super fancy ones, which would have been at the time like $120. And I had this realization of like, just what a generous act that was. And how I responded as such a like rotten little child, right? But in that moment, I missed it. I didn't see the generosity of my Father. I didn't see it. And I think sometimes we don't see the generosity in the moment of our Father in heaven. We don't see the generosity of God and everything He's doing in our life. And we want and we desire and we fight with Him to have our will over His, and we don't give Him our devotion. And so how do you give generously to God? It's a difficult question. We give Him our will. We give Him our worship. We give Him our actions. Jesus, the picture He gave was of wholehearted devotion. Wholehearted. He had open hands and He gave God everything. And He stayed on the cross. What a picture of wholehearted devotion when He stayed on the cross. And in that moment, Jesus faced separation from God. Complete separation. As He bared the weight of the world, of the sins, He took it to the chest wholeheartedly. And He carried that for us. He carried that for you and I. He put on sin so that we can generously have grace. Like He took the sin away so that we can live in His righteousness, so we can live in His grace, so that God can look at us and say, that is my son. That is my daughter. When you start to really look at what God gave to us in Jesus, that should be enough for us to wholeheartedly give ourselves to God. But often we're like spoiled children, aren't we? And it's not good enough, or I want, or that. And God is just sitting there saying, just give me your heart. Give me all of you. So the answer to the question, what can we give God? We can give Him the only thing He's ever wanted since sin entered the world. and that is us. That is wholehearted devotion to him. He wants you. He wants you to have a relationship with him. From the beginning, since sin entered the world, that's what he wanted. And he made a way. You can go back and start in Genesis and you can follow the trail. And it leads all the way to that hill where Jesus sat or hung on the cross and died. And he did it so that we could have fellowship with him again. And now we're living in an era and a time where we can have fellowship with him, where we can have access to these things. So how can you give generously to God? Open-hearted, open-handed, full-hearted devotion to him through your mind and your will, through your body, and through your worship and your devotion.